Well, the Prime Minister's announcement came while the First Minister was attending a climate event at the United Nations in New York. Humza Yousaf spoke to STV's political correspondent Ewan Petrie in advance of Rishi Sunak's speech.
First Minister, we're expecting a net zero statement from the Prime Minister in which he'll weaken some key green policies. What's your reaction to that?
I think it is completely unforgivable for the UK government, for the Prime Minister, in the face of complete climate catastrophe, as we've seen, particularly over the course of the summer, to roll back on commitments to reach net zero. And what the UK government are doing is not simply unforgivable, that is for sure. What they're also doing is taking the UK out of the global consensus that climate action has to be taken at pace.
But the UK government says it's still committed to that net zero target by 2050. Isn't that the key point here?
I don't think many people believe that. I don't think people believe that neither they're committed to that, because that will be the next target they roll back on, or frankly, from the changes that are reportedly being announced, that they will actually be able to meet that 2050 target. We haven't seen at this moment in time the detail of the statement, but notwithstanding that, what's been reported, we've seen really strong condemnation from business like Ford, for example. And business needs certainty to plough billions into that just transition to net zero, and that's all in jeopardy. So I don't think the UK government's commitments stack up, but what they're doing is sending a signal to the world that while the planet is on fire, while some parts of the world are unfortunately being swept away, lives being lost with flooding, with all of the climate impacts we're seeing right across the world, the UK government is saying we are going to roll back. We're going to abdicate our responsibility.
Do you agree, though, that politicians do have to take the public with them? And many people think these climate measures are going too far, too fast, and they're costing too much in a cost of living crisis.
That's why it's incumbent on governments to make sure they are supporting people with the just transition to net zero. So I can give you like 3 examples in the way that we're doing that. The Just Transition Fund, £500 million to help particularly oil and gas workers in the northeast transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewables. Government support for electric vehicles, government support for moving to zero direct emission heat systems like heat pumps. So there's just 3 examples of the way that the Scottish government is saying, yeah, we understand there are costs involved. We're here to help the public with those costs.
As you mentioned, you're at the UN this week for the New York Climate Week. What's the point of that visit?
The point of UN Climate Week is to make sure that the governments of the world are being serious about taking climate action, particularly in advance of COP28 later this year. And Scotland's been invited, and I'll shortly be attending the UN Climate Ambition Summit. And I've met with many heads of government. I've met with former presidents of the United States. Everybody here is saying one thing, and one thing only, that more action has to be taken. We have to move with more urgency.
You call Scotland's targets on climate change ambitious, but the fact is your government is not meeting them. They've not met them for 8 out of the past 12 years. So can you still be confident of reaching net zero by the target of 2045?
And it's why we have to go further and we have to see what more we have to do from a Scottish Government perspective. You're right, we narrowly missed the last target. We missed it, and we've got to face that and front that up. And that's why it's really important that we do produce, of course, a climate change action plan. We'll look to do that in the months ahead. And that is why we've got to rededicate ourselves to meet those targets for the government primarily, of course, but we've got to make sure all of us, of course, are taking the necessary action to get us to that ambitious net zero target of 2045. So I'm committed to that from a Scottish Government perspective. I won't lie to the viewers who are watching tonight. It will involve some really difficult choices, and that's hard because things are extremely difficult. We understand that for people. It's also why the government will make sure that we support people as much as we can on the journey towards that just transition, towards net zero.
OK, First Minister from New York, thanks for joining us on Scotland Tonight.
Thank you.